Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm your co-host, Kevin, K-Daddy from the Dirty South, the ATL, Hotlanta, Georgia. I'm a post-production master, filmmaker, and horror nerd.
And I'm your co-host, John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
Hey, what is up, everybody? We are back with another episode of 3Haunted. Today we are talking about Skinwalkers. But first, before we get started, we're going to do a little throw out to our sponsors today, which is Trap Film Festival. So take it away.
Cinematic, captivating, terrifying, and intense. Trap 2021 will return live May 21st through the 23rd. New categories, new prizes, and still no entry fee. Visit trapfilmfestival.com for more information.
All right, and welcome back. So, like I said, we are talking about Skinwalkers. How are you guys doing this week? Do you guys know a lot about Skinwalkers?
I'm doing all right. I did a little bit of studying, obviously, about the Skinwalkers. They are kind of creepy, if you ask me.
What about you, Ash? What do you think? What's your takeaway?
Oh man, so I can't even say I've done a little bit of research because I have been into this concept of Skinwalker since I was a kid. And so obviously we didn't grow up with the age of Google. Or at least I didn't, and I know John didn't. But it wasn't a thing until probably college. So for me, a lot of what I learned, I had to get, from Ask Jeeves. And even then that information was limited, and the library and films, and not that there's many films out there about it, but yeah, I've always been into it. Like, I'm about it. So just this idea is really fascinating to me. What about you?
It's definitely come up in conversation throughout my life, but I've never really taken the time to really take a step back and look into it. Like, I've talked more about shapeshifters than I have skinwalkers. So to me, I always had assumed that they were the same, but having done more research and looking into it a little bit more, it's just amazing how different they actually are.
I mean, I'd actually say they are a variation of shapeshifting. Granted, they're limited within their scope of what they can shapeshift into, but it's this idea that they can shift into animals that are four-legged. And to me, that is shapeshifting. You're going from one form to another. I would say that shapeshifting is the umbrella, and skinwalkers are a form of that. Now, it's not...
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's not like anybody can shapeshift, though, at least when it comes to a skinwalker. They're very specific on what type of person can become a skinwalker, at least in the Native American legends. You've got your, typically your medicine men gone bad. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just a oversimplified way of saying it. But you have these shaman or these men with magical powers that, whether it be healing or, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe that. But basically a magical man who goes bad, who uses his gifts and his talent for bad or for malevolent or for evil. And so then that becomes a physical embodiment into these four-legged creatures.
Right.
And it's pretty cool, like how, throughout the different tribes, just how each tribe has their own version of the shapeshifter, or not shapeshifters, but the skinwalkers, and how different they are, but at the same time, how similar they can be in like the subtleties, like, the claims of the eyes and the claims of the medicine man, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think that most of them agree on what it looks like, though. It's like a deformed animalistic body with like a marred face and blazing orange-red eyes. Like, that's pretty specific. And the fact that most of them fall in line with that description, like, that's pretty specific, which makes you kind of lean towards what exactly are they encountering out there that looks like this? Because It's like we see in different cultures where there's mythological creatures like the cryptids, and they all come to an agreement on what something looks like. And it's very specific, and it makes you wonder what people are actually encountering out there, because that doesn't seem like a coincidence.
Can I touch on the eyes really quick? There's something that I read about it that just stands out to me, and it's so interesting because, like, yes, the eyes are notorious to be in like a orange or yellow or a red, but the thing that I had read was that when the skinwalker is in their human form, their eyes have a certain look to it. Like, it's almost animalistic, it's almost predatorial. When they have shifted into their animalistic form, their eyes almost have like a humanistic form. Like, there's something off. Like, it's not human, it's not animalistic, it's not one or the other. And to that point, like, what do they say about eyes? They say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And so it's like, yeah, these skinwalkers, their bodies are physically changing from one being to the next, but their eyes are in essence remaining the same and not quite shifting. So what do you guys think of that? Like, do you think that the eyes are actually the window of the soul, and that's why the eyes are such a notorious part of the skinwalker folklore?
I think they are. And, and to kind of continue on to what you were saying about the eyes, they also say that if a human kind of locks eyes with the skinwalker is able to possess them and make them do things that they normally wouldn't do, which is creepy as hell, of course. But I don't know. That's just weird to me. It's kind of cool, but kind of witchcrafty. You know what I mean?
I mean, I take it as an energetic perspective. When our eyes are focused on something, we are energetically open. We are absorbing. We're taking things in. When we read books, when we watch movies, we consume. We're actually taking in physical scientific light into our eyes, which is a form of energy, right? So we are absorbing energy into our eyes. Do I think that some animalistic thing can possess me by looking at me in the eyes? The skeptic in me thinks that's a stretch, but do I think that there is something about the eyes being a window to the soul? Potentially. I do think we absorb energy through it. So if we're going out on a limb and saying that skinwalkers carry some kind of animalistic possession potential through eye contact, I guess that would depend on a few things. Are you vulnerable and open and willing? Because I don't think anyone can just go in eye contact to get possessed. Like, let's say hypothetically this is real. I think you have to be open to that. So if you're walking around just sucking it all in, all of the energy, and you are in that vulnerable space where something can do that, well, you just made a skinwalker's day.
It'd make dating it a hell of a lot easier.
Right? And, because they do feel that you have to have already had these magical type of powers, whether they be through healing or some other purpose, and those tend to be within their male figures, so their shaman and their medicine men, it would make sense that most skinwalkers are attributed to be male. But that doesn't mean that children and women cannot be skinwalkers. I know that they do believe if a child or a woman commits some kind of like deep-seated taboo crime, or they murder someone in their family, they can then become a skinwalker as well. And I know there are some people who want to be initiated into becoming a skinwalker, that they will go through the rituals of killing a family member to try and become a skinwalker.
Yeah, that's just crazy. I don't think I could ever do that. I don't think I could ever kill anybody that close to me, just to get those powers.
I mean, in that folklore, even muggles can become their ultimate shape-shifting form.
Right.
I do find it interesting. They wear the fur or the hide of whatever animals that they want to skinwalk into. And so it's taboo, or it's a bit less of a practice to wear animals of like a predator background, because that's almost an implication that you're like, hey, I'm gunning for being a skinwalker, or I am a skinwalker, and this is what I'm gonna turn into tonight. Yay, festivities, party at my house. So they tend to wear hides of animals that are animals of prey, not predator animals.
Right, like sheepskin, they can wear leather, they can wear the buckskin, and that's that's all good for them. Sometimes they do wear like the skulls and antlers on their heads as well.
Yeah.
That would give them like extra power
And I feel like that's just interesting, right? Because it's like this, that's my Hallmark card. That is like my big sign, my neon sign over my head that says, hey, bitches, I'm a skinwalker. Because, it's supposed to be like they don't talk about this to outsiders, is what I've
No.
read. They don't really give this information out. And so it's just like, if it's so taboo to talk about, wouldn't it be something that you want to be held secret? Or is it an intimidation thing? Like if I were trying to scare the bejesus out of people into not messing with me, I'd be like, all right, honey, go get me a wolf coat and I'm gonna get some antlers and wear it out just to put a point across. I may not be a skinwalker, but I'm gonna go scare some people into doing what I say.
So I got a question for you guys.
Yes.
If you were a skinwalker, what would you want to turn into?
Oh my gosh. If I were an evil creature, what would I want to be?
Yeah. I'm going there.
That's a tough one.
All right, I'll start. How about that? Make it easy.
I mean, it was your question. Yes, go ahead.
I would go with a coyote. I mean, you guys know me. I'm a sucker for dogs, so I am hands down going to go with either coyote or wolf. Probably actually more of a wolf because I tend to be a night owl. And I love the moon, so I will always howl at that moon.
I've heard him do it once or twice. Just saying. It explains so much.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if you have, John.
So in theory, if I had to pick an animal that was more Native American in origin, I would say the wolf. Graceful, powerful, strong creatures with like pack loyalty. I don't think it's a bad thing to, in theory, be something like that kind of animal. Now, if I could pick any animal that was a predator, I would pick a panther. I would totally pick a panther.
I can see that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That's hot. No, I'm just joking.
I mean, I'm just saying, if we're looking at all animals that are predators, I would pick a panther, a black panther.
I could see that. Yes, I was gonna say a black panther. I could see that definitely. Yeah, I think I would pick a bear for sure. I don't know, just something taller than I am for one, just because I'm kind of short. So
you're average, John.
I mean,
don't cut yourself short.
I mean, you are our Papa Bear.
Yes. There you go. It's either a bear, just because again for the strength and for the tallness, or maybe a fox. I don't know, just for the quickness. Why not?
You know what I find interesting is that with a lot of these creatures that are cryptids, and I would categorize a skinwalker as a cryptid, I find it interesting that they, just like these other creatures, they have ways of killing them that are very specific. So like with werewolves, you have silver bullets, and with the skinwalkers, they say that it's nearly impossible to kill them except with a bullet or a knife dipped in white ash. And for me, it's like, how the heck did you figure that out? How did you know? Like, well, the last night the bullet or the knife didn't do it dipped in purple ash, but tonight we're trying the white. Like, how does that? And I'm not trying to make a mockery of it. I know there's probably a lot of ceremonial background to the white ash, but for me, it's just like, how does one even go about figuring that out? Has there been skinwalkers killed with these? And if so, what they do with the bodies? Like, what happened? I want to know more. How did they figure that out? How did they catch it? And what did they find?
Right? I mean, like, was it in the shape of the animal when they killed it? Did it turn back like a werewolf? Like, if you kill it, did it turn back into its human form? What the hell happened?
Right? Like I want to know more. I would like to say, though, because one of you mentioned werewolves, I do notice that oftentimes in pop culture and films, they mix them. They mix the concept of the skinwalker and the werewolves. And I can see how that happens because skinwalkers can transform into or shift into wolves. But I think it's so much beyond that. And it gets limited. It's so short-sighted limited by film and television where it gets lumped in with the werewolves. Like there was a 2006 film named Skinwalkers with Jason Behr. And it's werewolves. It's a group of werewolves, but they call it skinwalkers. That really got under my skin because it's like I feel like they're banking off of this association that isn't actually true to the actual origins of it.
To your point, a show that I feel like did justice to the idea of the skinwalker was the HBO show last year, The Outsider. Jason Bateman. The Outsider did such a fantastic job with staying true to the folklore, and there was actually scenes within the show that really tie back to like what we were talking about with the wearing of the predatorial skins, and they really did do their research, and Stephen King did such a great job with building that world of honoring the folklore.
I haven't checked it out. I'll have to definitely watch that for sure.
There's so much history to this. It's not like people are just saying, oh man, there's these animals out there hunting our cows and our livestock that we can't explain. Like, they have such a deep rooted history on how the skinwalkers affect them, whether it be famine, a bad harvest, or so much more that gets attributed to the skinwalker and the presence of a skinwalker. Because the skinwalker is associated to magic, right? This supernatural power that it does more than just like murder or kill or take the animals. It has an effect on the reservation and tribe as a whole, bringing bad luck, in simple terms, to them. I find it interesting that it gets associated with a lot of things, more so than just the typical, oh, our cows were slaughtered. It's so much more than that, and it's so complex, and I could go on and on about skinwalkers.
I've actually had a little bit of fascination myself with skinwalkers and just transforming into an animal itself. When I was younger, I have dreams to where I was sprawling or walking on all fours around a neighborhood. And I know they were dreams, but they seemed so real to me. It was just really weird to me that I could see all of these things in a dream and just know that, I'm actually outside walking around on all fours, crawling around, just looking for things and chasing things. And it was really strange to me. So I don't know. I mean, obviously that has nothing to do with any of this, but it's just crazy and creepy to me. I don't know. Just bringing up dreams that I just remembered I had when I was younger.
One thing I do want to touch on is that I was reading about that, specifically from what I could gather from the Navajo, is that it's not so much they don't like to talk about it because they're trying to keep people out, but even the idea of speaking about it brings the potential of drawing them in. Like, talking about skinwalkers is enough energy to actually draw skinwalkers into their tribe or reservation land. And I'm so down with that. Like, I believe that in general. And maybe that makes me crazy, but I do believe that talking about things, depending how you talk about it, carries energy in itself. And so what you speak, if it carries enough energy, actually can manifest it.
It's the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
What you put out into the universe is what you're going to pull back.
And oftentimes I feel like in our society, in typical, US society, we talk about so many things, but most of us don't believe. And so talking about it does nothing, whether it be ghost hunting, possession, aliens, whatever. We get excited talking about things like, ooh, maybe it could be real, but we don't actually believe in it. And I feel like this is so ingrained into a culture that it does carry more energy because it is real to them. And so just by talking about it is enough to pull it in. Like, for me, there's certain things I don't like to talk about too much because I do feel I put a lot of my own energy into it when I talk about it, that I'm worried it's going to manifest too. And maybe that makes me paranoid or crazy or, superstitious, but that's what I believe. And so I respect that. Like, I mad respect that.
Oh, hell yeah, definitely. I respect that as well.
I can't not respect that.
I mean, if we're being honest, like, full cards out on the table, there's a reason why I do not watch possession films in my home. I do feel that if you believe in something enough, you can draw those things in. And I do. I used to say, okay, I don't believe in that stuff. I'm not this, I'm not that. But at the heart of it, like, I have to be honest with myself. And I do, to an extent, feel there is a part of me that does believe that that's potentially real. I don't believe it's 100% real, but I do believe it is potentially real. And that is enough for me,
right,
to not necessarily invite it into my home. Because like we discussed earlier, Circling back, eyes are the window, right? So if I'm watching something and my energy is pulling it in, I do kind of worry about that being pulled into my home. And so it's just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm not going to watch those films. Like Kevin even knows. We were talking about, movies to watch during Halloween. And I'm like, I will not watch The Exorcist in my home. Now, I'm weird. And it's like, okay, I might go with a group of friends and have some drinks and watch it in somebody else's home. Let them pull that into their house. But I'm not going to watch it in my home, especially alone, because I feel like there's a different type of energy when you're heckling something with your friends and watching it and completely heightened in all of your energy and your senses in your own home.
Your safe place.
Right. And to kind of go with that, we joke around about the ghost hunting shows because most of the time they're bullshit. But in some cases where there is quote unquote demonic activity and they know the specific name of the demon, they will not say it just because of the fact that even if they speak it out loud, people that are watching it on TV, it could affect them as well watching it on TV alone, like you're saying with the possession stuff. So they blank it out or they don't say it at all just in case. And they do, and I've seen a couple episodes where they're like, all right, we're not going to say the name of this because this is going to happen and we don't want to chance that for everybody getting fucked up, basically, to say.
I know one of the names.
Yes. But we're not saying that because that's not what we do.
Not what we do.
That's not what we do.
I am very much intrigued by cryptids, by their commonality across the world, how you can find creatures with different names among every culture, which just fascinates me. Like how are these groups describing the exact same thing and why? Like, what are those? What is actually out there that people are experiencing? Because it's not like this person who's in Russia speaking a Russian language is going to be able to like describe exactly what this Native American person is speaking. And I know we're getting into another subject of mythology and folklore that Kevin loves, but
yes, the thing that like you actually touched on something, that the difference between languages and how things can be common. Like rewind 30 years ago, pre-Google, it's not that long ago, and if you hear a story from somebody in Russia versus a story from South Africa or a story from the US, like it's so amazing how interconnected and like similar the stories can be with people that have never been able to talk to each other. And it's like, how can you ignore the commonalities between A and B?
I think people get really uncomfortable with that. And so they try to logic it in circles and triangles and all sorts of things to make it fit into a bubble where they're comfortable with. So they're like, oh, well, it was the internet and they somehow got that story across, or someone traveled to another place and the story spread, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, it's like, no, the internet has helped us connect so we realize those stories are present. But these stories go back like hundreds of years. They've been there for a long time, pre all of that, pre-digital connection, and it's there and it's present for a reason. But I think again it goes down to what people are comfortable with. People will completely logic the heck out of something with not actual logic to become something that they're comfortable with. Now, I'm not saying don't have skepticism, obviously, but in that same token, don't do the opposite and like try and throw the law of gravity and physics on something that gravity and physics doesn't apply to.
I mean, at one point, even gorillas, silverback gorillas, were considered cryptozoology because people would see it, but no one really believed that they existed.
Oh, the cryptid?
Yeah, but like silverback gorillas, go to the Atlanta Zoo, go to any zoo now, and you will see these gorillas that were once categorized as cryptid.
Yeah, and there's a ton of things that constantly get discovered even now. I think we feel like we're so advanced that we think we know that we've discovered everything there is to discover. But then even just like a month ago, they discovered all these new species of things living in underwater caves under the ocean. And it's just like, okay, those exist. And we have movies and I'm not going to say that that means, these movies are 100% true, but we have horror movies of people going, what is it called? Spelunking under caves and then suddenly attacked by these horror monsters that have zero eye capability and they're carnivorous and all that stuff. And people are like, well, that's not real. And then we discover these whole new species of things in underwater caves that have no eyesight. So they didn't need eyeballs. So they have evolved with zero eyes, but they have hella heightened senses in other ways. And it's like, that just makes sense. Like logically, that just makes sense. But then you go into this is completely different. People that have magical powers that can transform into animals, it's different. But that's not to say there isn't something out there. Some kind of predator with orange red eyes and a marred face that is maybe human-ish. And why that's so far-fetched, I don't know. Like, we are related to how many species out there? Pigs have our DNA or similar DNA to us. Primates are like very distant cousins. We evolved from the same, if you believe in it, which I do, by the way, from the same ancestor. So it's like, really, is it that far-fetched to think that there's something else out there?
Not at all. Like we are so young in our stages of learning about the world. Like there's so much more out there that we just don't know and understand yet.
Exactly. Kind of going back to the whole actual like Skinwalker stuff recently, and this is going back, I don't know how many years, but people have claimed that they've seen like swift animals running alongside their vehicles as they're driving around at night, basically like matching their speed. So if they're driving like 35 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, this animal is running right next to them. And after a short period, they kind of like run off into the wilderness. And sometimes the people say that they've seen them turn into a man who like bangs on the hood of the car sometimes too. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, so they've kind of evolved from like not just killing and doing all this bad stuff, but like being tricksters basically now. So they've gotten a sense of humor, I guess. I don't know. I mean, kind of, if I were to do something like that, if I were a Skinwalker, I'd probably be messing with people too. Not gonna lie. The way that I am, I'd be running around trying to mess with them while they're driving too. So I don't know.
Kind of funny because like you call them like tricksters,
Right.
And if you look at the predatory nature of some of the more common ones, like the coyotes, the wolves, the foxes, the cougars, the dogs,
The hyenas.
they're almost like, as a predator, they're almost tricksters in nature anyways.
Okay, let's just play devil's advocate for a moment. And
Ooh, I like these games.
let's just say these are real. All right, Skinwalkers are real.
Okay.
If they originate from very smart medicine men, because let's be real, if you're healing people, you have to have a bit of a brain, right? You've got a lot of intuition and you've got to know your plants and all the things, how to heal. So let's say they're real and they're evolving from these very smart people. Well, it's not like they're stuck 400 years ago. They're evolving with us, right? So people have guns, people have shotguns. Do you think a predator is going to keep attacking people knowing that they've armed up and evolved with us? It's not like you have this creature that started back 2,000 years ago and it's the only one and it's stuck in its ways. Like, they evolve with us too, right? Just like animals do. So let's just say these are real and they're sentient beings. I mean, people have evolved. They arm up. They're a little bit more frisky and trigger happy. So, of course, aren't you going to see maybe a little bit more shenanigans, less aggressive behavior so they don't get hunted out as easily? In general, people are, they're not musket loading anymore. You can't attack people living by themselves with nobody around for thousands of miles to, own this. The society has grown. People are clustered more. There's larger communities. People have access to weapons more. So if these things are real, don't you think they might have changed up their game plan a little?
Probably.
Definitely.
Going back to the predatory nature of like coyotes and wolves and all that, like as humans have kind of taken over building houses in their natural habitat, like they've had to grow and adapt into how they get their food. So why wouldn't the Skinwalker have to adapt and grow into what the world is today?
We've grown. as communities, and it makes it a lot harder to attack and infiltrate. This isn't a horror movie where something can come pick us off one by one and suddenly kill, a whole community of 10,000 people. Like, it's just, it doesn't work like that. And so we see it even now with the pandemic. I'm going to take it back to COVID. What happened when people stopped being out and they were in their homes? Wild animals actually started coming in more. We heard about bears coming into cities, and actually even my own town that I'm living in right now, there's a pack of coyotes that are actually starting to come in more. And you see them running along the road, hunting rabbits, which is something they never would have done before in the middle of the day because people are out less. And so it's like they adapt and they move out of our main areas, right? Even like reservations have grown themselves. So it's not like Native Americans. I think people often feel like Native Americans are set back 3,000 years and they're still living the same way that they used to 3,000 years ago. Like, people do a disservice to Native American tribes. And it's just like, no, they are smart people that have also grown in their communities. And so animals by nature have moved out of it, and their patterns, it's an ecosystem, their patterns have changed as well. It's interesting with COVID because our patterns have changed so much that the wild animals are actually starting to move back in. So I'd be curious to see, are there more skinwalker sightings? I don't know. Did they adapt to these risings of big communities that happen to be able to arm themselves a little more? There's safety in numbers. And has there been more sightings since people have been forced to kind of isolate and stay more, not only isolated, but out less?
Almost like, not to make a comparison to like vampires, but like a vampire pack, like where they stick together and hunt together for protection for each other.
Very, very interesting.
John, I'd like to hear more about what you think.
I mean, I don't know. In general, I believe that they are possibly real. I mean, you can't basically deny that, like we were saying, when you manifest stuff. So maybe, they are real. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just in awe of the whole thing. It would be interesting to me to see one, but how would I actually know that they're a skinwalker, to be honest? But I'm not going to stare into the eyes and take the chance of being possessed.
Oh my gosh.
What?
You guys are going to think I'm crazy. Commit me. But
Bring it up.
back in high school, or right after I graduated, there was a fellow that I went on a date with. And for some reason, he wanted to go on like a very late night walk onto this trail that was known for being previous Native American land. And I'm thinking, sure, why the hell not? I've known him a long time. So it wasn't like I'm going with a stranger I didn't know. I'd known him a while in high school. And so I had a level of trust. And we went on this trail and we stopped at this big placard that talked about the Native American land and what it used to be. And he started just talking to me, and it felt like a shift in energy before I even looked at him. And it was just like something changed, and the tone in his voice and the energy behind me. So I kind of slowly turned, I see where the movies get this from, because you don't want to react too quickly, but it's just like, what? All the hair on the back of my neck just stood up. What's going on? Goosebumps. And I turned around and he's still talking to me. And I look up at him because he was significantly taller, and he's looking down at me. And I still remember this to this day. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him, but I swear it was like seeing two layers. So I'm seeing the person looking at me, right? And talking to me, but it almost felt like I was looking at somebody overlaid over something else. So like a human face over a snake face, which I don't know, like snake eyes and like the smile, like a snake. I don't even know, like when you see just the shape of a snake's face. And all I could think was, what the hell am I seeing? I don't do drugs and I'm not drinking. What is going on? And I'm thinking the moonlight's playing tricks on me, or I don't even know. Just being able to see, like looking in his eyes, but seeing basically like snake eyes peering back at me behind, almost like layered underneath regular human eyes, is really disarming. And I remember thinking, I gotta run. And this is supposed to be a date, right? I booked it. Like I booked it out of that trail, running back to my car in the middle of the night. And I stood by my car because I was the one that drove, thinking, oh shit, I just ditched my date on this like trail in the middle of the night. I should probably wait for him. He must be thinking, what the heck is wrong with her? And I'm waiting there for like 10 minutes because I'd ran all the way back and remember hearing a whistling. And he comes strolling up the trail with his hands in his pockets, just whistling, and comes up to the car, over to the passenger side door, and gets in the car like nothing. Like I didn't just freak out and run right away from him to my car. And I'm thinking, okay, so something's wrong. Something is very wrong. Because if I had imagined something and overreacted and was crazy, wouldn't he have come out saying, what the hell is wrong with you? What just happened? Take me home.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead, he just comes strolling up, taking his time, walking up the trail. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll get in the car. I get in the car and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to ask me to take him home, right? And so I start the car and he's just like, starts caressing my face. And he's like, okay, where do you want to go next? And I'm just like, what the hell?
I have to question your taste in guys. First the one for the haunted house, now this guy. Like, what the fuck are you thinking?
And I was the same age, both of those.
That's I don't know.
You know what though? With that one specifically, the haunted house guy was a new guy I had met and just like
Just a douche.
yeah, out and about, didn't know him too well. The one that we'll call him Snake Boy, he actually was someone I knew in high school for like years and had been a very kind person to me, and I would say a friend. So that was a complete left field for me. That was like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? How have you been hiding this whole time?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the whole trickster thing. Maybe he was luring your ass in for this whole thing. Like, what the fuck?
He's still my friend to this day.
Well, if you listen to this, hi, you're cool. I changed my mind about everything.
I mean, there were a lot of, I didn't address it then, but after years later, I did address that and we had lots of conversations. But due to his privacy and my respect for that, I'm just not going to go much further than that.
Makes complete sense.
So do you think he was a skinwalker?
Possibly, but
Do you?
I don't know. Can skinwalkers be snakes? Because what I saw was very snake-like.
I mean, it's kind of predatory, isn't it?
I guess. I don't know.
People wear snakes.
Doesn't have four legs, but
But I guess people can wear snakeskin. So what about you guys? Do you have any interesting experiences of people that maybe did display animalistic behaviors? And not just like, she's a tiger in bed, but like realistically, you were a little concerned that there was something going on there more than what we're typically used to.
No, I've got nothing like that other than my crazy ass dream that I told you about that was ongoing. Basically, I've had it off and on when I was younger, but it felt so damn real that I don't even know what that was. How about you, Kevin?
I've had experiences where people's personalities have changed and it's been different, but I wouldn't say to that level of displaying like animalistic, predatory.
He's being a pervert. Thinking sexually.
Yep.
We told you not that, Kevin. Come on.
But you know what? I mean, we joke about that though, but realistically, like when someone is in that like zone,
Yeah.
Right. I would think so.
I don't know. I think I'm thinking too literal of like the specifics of like the animalistic turning into the coyote or the wolf or the cougar. But like now that I'm kind of slowing down and actually like really processing my thoughts, it's like, thinking back and like seeing the changes of somebody's personality from almost one extreme to the next.
I mean, it borderline sounds demonic, to be honest. It borderline sounds demonic, but my thing is with demonic, you have this concept of a person being possessed by a different entity external to them. But with the skinwalkers, it seems like these are people that have embraced an evil nature within themselves as categorized by the culture that they surfaced in. And so they are still them, but they're embracing this part of themselves and magnifying it and becoming these animal versions of themselves. But I also wonder, are the skinwalkers a shape-shifting form of a demonic possession? Because what's the difference we see in Native American cultures that they have spirit animals and they identify with animals and they are totems and they're representations. And sometimes you have spirit guides that accompany you almost like a rider throughout your life. And yet the Skinwalker is an evil being that is a person that kind of transforms into these animals that are predators. And I mean, even the stuff that you have to do to be a Skinwalker, you have to kill a family member or embrace evil or do something really bad, almost like sever your soul. And I just wonder, is it maybe their way of expressing some kind of possession?
I would honestly say yes, because like humans are so complicated. Like there's so many different layers to who we are. And I think with the idea of the Skinwalker, like if you're actually embracing that darker, eviler side of that person, like you're almost possessing yourself with another true nature of who that person is.
I mean, think of like the animals. I mean, what do they know? They know to hunt, mate, and whatever else. That's just all that they really are. It's one basic, especially the predatory ones, killing machine, basically. So being a Skinwalker, being an evil person turning into basically just that. Just fascinating. But yeah, I mean, just going back to the whole thing is just, hunting for the food, basically mating for the purpose of.
It's instinctual.
Yes, that's all it is, I would think. And I think once they turn into that animal, that's exactly the animal takes over, and it is what it is.
Does the Skinwalker choose the animal that they turn into, or is it just like to kind of what we're talking about, like a deep inner layer of who that person is? Is that something that just that animal that they turn into and that they're drawn to, is that already a part of who they are?
That's a good question. Obviously, I don't know the answer to that one, but no, I like that question. That's a really good one.
I mean, I would think that it's a choice because if they're able to possess humans and they wear the pelts of the animals that they shapeshift into, then I would think that they're choosing the specific forms that they're taking. But I'm not a Skinwalker. I don't know. Guess you'd have to ask one.
Yeah.
It seems like, if they have power and they're wearing the pelts of the animals that they turn into and they're wearing antlers or skulls on their heads to harness more power and they're able to possess humans, then it would sound to me like they are able to choose what animals they are able to shapeshift or transform into. Because it says in one of the folklore, if they're being pursued, they can change again into something else to escape. So to me, that sounds like a choice.
Sure.
They can choose to be something else, so they can choose what they turn into.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading that somewhere, actually. That makes sense.
I wish we could interview a Skinwalker. I have so many questions.
I think we all do at this point. Seriously.
And I mean, they're really specific because there's a difference. They respect the animals that hunt out of the circle of life and what the Skinwalker is doing. The Skinwalker is killing. It's not hunting as an animal, as a circle of life. The Skinwalker kills out of greed, anger, envy, spite, or revenge. So those are very specific things that are not attributing to a circle of life kind of sustaining your life need. And it actually, they do believe the witches of the Skinwalker, so the Skinwalkers that are witches, live on the unexpired lives of their victims. So they have to continually kill or they're going to die themselves. It's like feeding that energy, that life energy within themselves. So it's like a vampire.
But there is a very similar vibe between Skinwalkers and vampires, where it's just this instinctual need and I don't want to call it a lust, but there's this instinctual drive to do these almost horrendous things. Like if you really take a step back, they are horrendous things.
I know you guys have actually heard of Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Partial focus on the Skinwalkers from there. We will be touching on the whole Skinwalker Ranch in another podcast. Skinwalkers were just a little bit of focus there.
So there's a ranch in Utah known as the Skinwalker Ranch, and it was originally given its name because of the cattle mutilations on that ranch. It didn't look like it could be done by a regular animal that was a predator. It also didn't look to be done by humans. So it was given the idea of a Skinwalker Ranch. It's not just some random thing. It is actually close to what is called the 9 Mile Canyon, which has petroglyphs. And so it was a source of travel by Native Americans. So there is this idea that Skinwalker Ranch may have Skinwalkers present on it. But I mean, there's a whole lot of other stuff that they say is present on Skinwalker Ranch. It's just like a hotbed of supernatural meta, which we should definitely talk about in another episode because there's just so much interesting information. It's located near the Ute Indian Reservation. And it's near 9 Mile Canyon, which is actually interesting in itself because there's all the petroglyphs, but there's also a lot of energy near there. And it's actually one of the entrances to 9 Mile Canyon, which leads to Skinwalker Ranch, is in a little city called Price, Utah. And boy, do I have stories about Price, Utah for you. Now, the thing with Skinwalker Ranch, if you've never heard about it and you're just hearing about it for the first time, it is heavily guarded. It's privately owned. Please do not go to Skinwalker Ranch and think you can break onto the property. That is a big no-no. If you're curious, go hike 9 Mile Canyon. There is an overlook that looks over the ranch. That's as close as you're going to get. Please don't break onto people's private property. Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mama Ash.
That is our public service announcement for the day.
There's part of me that would love to go to Skinwalker Ranch,
Or at least close enough.
just close, just to experience it. But to your point, Ash, healthy caution.
Absolutely.
Healthy caution goes a long way.
And you don't take our word for it in terms of what may be meta to you. What do we know? We're a bunch of weirdos talking about weird shit. Here to entertain you.
And it's great.
So have you guys ever seen the art depictions of Skinwalkers?
Some, yes.
I think I struggle with being able to separate the difference between the art depictions of a skinwalker and a shapeshifter. We had talked earlier about how skinwalkers are a subsidiary of the shapeshifter umbrella. Yeah, maybe I haven't actually seen an art depiction of a specific skinwalker.
The mythology of shapeshifting is just this idea, the ability to physically transform through a superhuman ability, divine intervention, demonic manipulation, sorcery spells, or having inherited the ability. And its idea is rooted in the oldest forms of totemism and shamanism. So to me, dude, that sounds like skinwalkers. I think the difference is that shapeshifting can have a myriad of sources, whereas the skinwalker shifting is very specific as to who can do it and how they do it. So I think it's just an umbrella. It's an umbrella concept, whereas shapeshifting creatures can include werewolves and vampires. Skinwalkers, it's more of the animals that are predators. It is limited to specific creatures, whereas with shapeshifting in general, you could be all sorts of things.
Yeah, I just sent you a couple pictures.
It's fascinating and unsettling at the same time. Like
it's just the depiction that they have in the actual pictures is just anything beyond what I would even think they would look like to me. So
it's like there's a animalistic predatory vibe to it, but it doesn't feel like it's a predatory in a self-sustaining sort of way. Like there's like a hatred behind it that's like, I must be this predator for other reasons other than to sustain life and sustain my well-being.
I mean, I guess it depends because some of these creatures look like Wendigos, and some of them, like what we've seen described as Wendigos, which is a completely separate creature that is rooted in Native American mythology, but also in our own, I think it gets muddled, but its origins, I think, do come from more of a Native American myth. And so it's just like, some of them look like Wendigos, some of them look like werewolves, but they all share a very common feature, don't they? They are murderous for the sake of something that isn't self-sustaining. It isn't part of a larger ecosystem. And so it's just interesting because, again, we're getting into the lines of how mythology is very similar across cultures. And we have very similar creatures doing very similar things for very similar reasons. And I'm going to say similar again. And they may have different names, but they're all very, very, very alike. They're all sharing commonalities.
To quote Shakespeare, a rose is a rose given any other name.
And to me, the name's not mattering here.
Mm-mm.
I respect the tradition, I honor the culture, but I also am seeing the similarities across these different myths and these different cryptids. Like, they're all very similar. Because isn't a Wendigo very similar to a Skinwalker in terms of a man that has become a creature that is murdering?
Yeah. I was going to say, do either of you know anybody that we could talk to? Because I got so many questions. I just want to know. I want to pick the brain. I want to
I know a few people that live on reservations, but I just don't. Again, I'm trying to honor cultures, and I feel like it's invasive to go in and be like, "Tell me about this."
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's a great idea to pitch it to our
Right.
audience and say, "Hey, is anybody willing to share? We invite you to share this with us," versus being invasive and going in and be like, "Hey, tell me about all these sensitive things," especially if there is a concern that by talking about it is going to manifest it. I would never want to put somebody in that position.
Right. Right.
All right, you lovely people.
Yes,
Do you have
yes.
any last remarks about Skinwalkers that's eating at you, that's possessing you to
Ha, but
you know me, I gotta make a bad joke in there somewhere.
No, I'm definitely curious to know more. I know myself I'm going to kind of research it more as to what I can find out. When I did the research for this, it basically came up with the same stuff on different sites and everything else. But I'll see if I can find anything else.
It's one of those, I'm curious and I want to know more and I want to keep diving deeper into the research and learning more about the history of it. Like what had sparked this folklore and this being? Like what is it that made it solidify itself into our history? But at the same time, I'm just going to embrace whatever information that comes. I'm going to respect the culture that comes behind it. I want to know more, and I would love to keep researching and diving deeper and getting to really understand the idea of a skinwalker again, out of respect. Like I will only go as far as I'm able to without pushing it, and not going to force anybody to tell me stories or go into things that they're not comfortable with. But I would honestly love to learn more about it and learn just why it's so prominent and why it has such a mark in our history and why it's been so solid throughout all of these years.
I think that this would be a really good opportunity for us to look into doing more research and not just what we can find on the internet. I think that's like a super default. People rely on the internet, and if they can't find it on there, they give up. But really looking into libraries, what books are out there? What have people written physically that we can maybe get our hands onto and do some real research into this idea, these origins of skinwalkers and metamorph creatures. Kind of start to tie those in together with folklore and regional mythology. That'd be really interesting. And then maybe also taking some kind of trip out to a couple of these spots to see, not necessarily, hey, can we find a skinwalker, but really start to get an idea about the lay of the land and the vibe, the energy of these spaces, to see if maybe is there a certain space that lends toward this kind of activity or mythology? Is there a commonality in these regions or areas of land that might lend way to this?
And like Ashley said, for any of our listeners that have anything to add, please feel free to message us, send us an email, do something. Let us know.
Or if you have any personal experiences you'd like to share, it may not even be with a skinwalker, but if you think you've encountered people that may have some kind of animalistic manifestation within them, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear your story. Please do reach out to us. Let us know. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in to the 3Haunted podcast with your hosts. I'm Ashley.
I'm John Thomas.
And I'm Kevin K. Daddy.
You have any questions or suggestions? Email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to like us on our social media. Hit that follow button.